work in the Cascade. I'm a succession controller.
I'm Raphael, a teacher at the CGP Biloton.
Paper, carton, recycle. Your company has sustained growth throughout the years by acquisitions and by having a diversified product and by maintaining your values. Hi, my name is Varla and I'm accompanied by Carly and Ryan, and we're here to help you move forward with every step of the way. So why are we here today? We're here to provide insights on PCR's plant performance since the fourth quarter and which project or investment should PCR undergo to maintain their current strategy. So we're going to look at three main considerations. One, the current situation. So how was PCR's past performance and what's the current state of their industry? Two, should a new dryer be acquired and how shall this be financed through the investment project? And three, the operational issues that your company is facing and how can they become more efficient moving forward. So we'll take a look at the current situation. We're going to be doing an analysis of the company and a quantitative and qualitative analysis of the fourth quarter. So the current situation right now, where are we? So right now, PCR provides products that differentiates itself from its competitors based on values that we have, mainly environmental friendliness. So the impact is you have an incentive to innovate and provide environmentally friendly products. Second, production cost varies from one production batch from another. And this makes the effect that creating budgets for cost becomes more difficult to establish. Third, PCR's growth is greatly influenced by their acquisitions. So PCR must carefully analyze their acquisitions every time they do so. Moving forward, the strategy that our company must undergo is to reduce costs through an acquisition that increases the product line and aligns with the values that our company has. Now, Carly will talk a bit more about the performance of the fourth quarter.
Perfect, thank you, Myla. So where are you right now currently in your situation? So we evaluated the fourth quarter, basically the costs that you incurred when making your products. So the first direct material that we looked at was actually the fiber cost. So from this, we looked at what you actually allocated to pay for these materials and actually what you paid. So from this, we calculated two variances. We calculated the price variance and the quantity variance. So what do these numbers mean exactly? The price variance basically means that this is how much you thought that you would be paying for the amount that you would be using for each unit. And basically the quantity variance, it means how much quantity you thought you'd be using per unit. So from this we can see that you have unfavorable variance for fibers and a positive variance for price. So from this we can conclude that you have a positive variance, but you did have a negative quantity variance. And similarly, the same thing happened with chemicals. The chemical direct material, you had a negative, so an unfavorable quantity variance, and a positive price variance. So from this, we can take away that the fourth quarter performance, the quantity variances for all the materials were unfavorable. This means that there was a high wastage for materials per unit. Since you had a quantity variance, like we showed here, the issue was not with price variance like you thought it would be. You thought that the price variance was the issue due to the fact that you thought you were paying too much for what you're paying for, but in reality, it was truly the fact that you didn't allocate the direct material properly per unit. So the price variance is unfavorable for chemical materials, and we recommend that you set a different price. The set price is different from the actual price, which will be discussed later on in my operational issues. So a little bit more on the operational issues. We're going to talk about budgetary issues, the employee retention and employee morale as well, and maintenance options. Okay, so a little bit more on the operational issues, the variances. This was for the whole year. I'm not going to go over it fully again, but this just basically shows throughout the whole year, you did have positive price variances compared to just the last quarter, and you still had negative, unfavorable quantity variances in that domain. So from this, we can take away that the overall price variance is not the issue, like I mentioned before. It is truly the quantity variance that we need to focus on. So we need to focus on allocating the quantity properly for the per unit basis rather than the price, because the issue was not the price. So PCR must pursue operational efficiencies by reducing the wastage and allocating properly. So a little bit more on the operational issues at your company right now. So right now, how can we control the budget? Like I discussed, the variances is one of the issues with this. So one of the issues is the fact that you can't establish a proper budget. With the variances, we can see that we do need to change the way that we are budgeting things. So the impact of this issue means that the price is varying dramatically, and we looked at why that's happening right before. So from this, we do recommend that you set different standards for your quantity. So we recommend that you look more into this. You can base this off of past years, or more specifically this year in general, since it has changed so drastically, and more specifically in the last quarter. We also think that the new investment project will also allow you to reduce your wastage in your direct material use as well. So how can we retain your employees much better? So we have an issue with this at your company right now. We noticed that the recent acquisition means that you have new and old employees from your past acquisition, and they're working for your company now. So this means that there is a value change due to the fact that your values right now are autonomy, commitment, diversity, and respect. And the values of the company that you are acquiring, the employees that are there, they value more, they value leadership, collaboration, and basically quality. So from this, what we think that the impact of your employees having different values is the fact that your employees have a different view of management, since they do respect different things. So from this, we think that there might be a negative opinion based on management or how your company is working. So we want to change that with our recommendation. And also, due to the fact that employees might not feel motivated or, let's say, connected to your company since they have different values, we think that this might affect productivity, especially employee retention, as well as their well-being in general. So we want to address this. So from this, we recommend that we want to implement group team building activities. This is something that is really detrimental, since this is new employees, old employees that haven't been working together. So we think that this is something that could really be beneficial. Ideas like this could be a barbecue, things held after work or during work hours, team building exercises. It could be something as simple as an escape room, just to make sure that they know how to work together and they can basically learn from each other. As well as the fact that we want to have company-wide trainings on just like the values that you do hold, and make sure that all your employees do understand that there is a transition happening and that they understand what is happening. And lastly, we want to allocate company time to make sure that your employees understand their actual expectancies as an employee and know that they can work their way up in your company if they do want to. This is something that we want to address. Especially with new employees, they might not feel like they can work their way up in the company. We want to make sure that they understand what we believe in and how they can get there. So now I'm going to pass it off to Marla to talk about the rest of the operational issues. Thank you.
So we have two maintenance options. One was the subcontract, which was option one. And the second one was to do the maintenance internally by having our 6 production employees work extra hours, and eventually add another employee to focus more on the maintenance. So from the first subcontract option, the total maintenance cost yearly is $32,000. So we are subcontracting the maintenance on twice a year on a monthly basis. And for the option 2, currently we have 6 employees, and for the first 4 months, in order to hire that additional employee, the current employees will have to work an extra hour of overtime. However, after the 4 months have passed and we have hired the extra employee, they will have to work an extra 30 minutes from their shift. So we took that into consideration, and on a annual basis, maintenance cost would be $22,000. Yes, the option 2 is less costly, but there are some qualitative factors we must take into consideration when looking at these 2 options. So the first one is that if we subcontract the maintenance costs, we have professionals that are trained and specialized on the maintenance to be done on our facilities. The cons is that it's less frequent. So compared to the first option, they will be doing it approximately almost every day, little by little, dedicating like an hour or 30 minutes extra to that. However, for option 2, the pros is that maybe there is incentives for employees who would want to work more hours, get more money, which is good. However, and also the frequent maintenance will be done, which is good for our company as well. But the cons is that maybe the employees would feel overworked, considering that for the first 4 months they'll have to stay an extra hour. And considering that, so some of our employees don't have our we have problems with them, it might not seem like a favorable option moving forward with that. And there's also additional cost to hire a new employee, and it takes time to look for the ideal employee that we're going to add with this second option. And it increases the additional tasks for them. So we would pursue the contracting option as it would reduce the pressure on our current employees. So now Ryan's going to be talking about the investment project.
Perfect, thank you, Mala. So we'll first look at it from a quantitative aspect and then look into the qualitative aspects that might influence our decision on purchasing the new dryer. So looking into the dryer option, this is obviously a more cost-effective dryer that will lead to savings in utilities, in labor costs, and as well reduce wastage, which we'll look into more in the qualitative aspects. But right now, trying to match the internal rate of return of 12.5%, which we actually use to calculate our NPV, we expected a net present value overall for the project of $96.3 million over a lifetime of 10 years for the project. We expect sales growth of 10% in the first 5 years, and then continued growth of 6.5% in the following years. We base it off a tax rate of 30%, and we also expect to save on a tax shield of $769,000. This was based on the CCA rate of 20%, which is used on dryers and other machineries. We also expect annual labor cost savings of $53,400. This is based on the fact that we can actually eliminate one employee completely from the process by using this new machine. It will require an initial investment of $3.8 million, and we're also factoring in an opportunity cost of $4.3 million. Now this opportunity cost comes from year 0, when we actually have a 45-day delay where we cannot use any of the machinery. So we actually need to remove the machinery and ship the new machine from the United States, and overall we're expecting it to be 45 days. We'll go into a little more detail on the shipping of this during our risk and mitigations, but this is what we use to calculate our net present value. So moving on to the qualitative aspects, there is definitely a lot of pros in turn. Overall, we're actually achieving operational efficiency. We're definitely reducing our labor and utilities costs, and we're also reducing wastage. Reducing wastage will definitely help us in reducing our quantity variance, which is the main driver in what is actually giving us an unfavorable material variance. We're also going to maintain a competitive advantage. As we know, there's a lot of other recyclable companies coming into the industry, and this will help us maintain a competitive advantage as they are trying to purchase a machinery. We're purchasing the cutting edge machinery that will maintain a competitive advantage. Obviously the cons, as I mentioned, was the dead time of 45 days, and we're also going to have to allocate about $105,000 in training, but this is more time that we need to spend on training while trying to balance all the other employee issues that were mentioned previously. So we'll now move on. Well, yes, so the final decision is to acquire the dryer. It is definitely in the best interest of our company. So now moving into the financing options. So we had two presented options to us: internal financing. This was based on a 4.5% interest payment over 20 years. We're expecting $250,000 in principal payments with $11,300 in interest payments annually. Our external financing option, which was based on 6.5% interest over 15 years, was obviously not only pricier but also had a shorter payback period, expecting $330,000 principal payments and $21,700 in interest expense. Considering the principal of both loans that we'd be able to loan is $5 million, we were definitely seeing that internal financing looked like the more interesting option. We also wanted to answer to your inquiry about options in terms of grants or external funding related to companies with sustainable operations or that use recycled materials. So the Government of Canada does actually offer grants, particularly by practice and by industry. So what I mean by practice is in your actual operations, you use machinery or certain materials that they actually will subsidize. And by industry, in the printing industry, there are actually banks and the Canadian government that offer grants related to the pulp and paper industry. So we're expecting government grants of about $50,000 to $200,000. Obviously, this will not cover the entire financing amount, but it will definitely lower the actual amount of principal that we need to loan from the get-go. So just looking at the qualitative aspects of internal financing, there's definitely going to be less pressure on how we use our funds. Because the internal financing is getting money from corporate, they're going to be looking into more detail of how we spend these funds. It will not have the financial freedom that we usually would have with a normal loan. but obviously there are a lot more cons. We will have to provide audited financial statements for the next 15 years. There is a shorter payback period, and the new dryer has to be placed as collateral for the loan, which is the whole reason of using this loan. The qualitative aspects of the internal financing is that the longer payback period, which was actually the con of the other, is in our favor. We also can pursue other financing at the same time because it's using our parent company. We're not actually applying to any other banks. And the con is that the same thing that was a pro for the other, we'll have pressure from our corporate of how we spend our money. So overall, we will pursue internal financing and definitely seek out these government grants, which is free money that can definitely reduce our loan amounts.
Okay, so now we're at the overview. So we're going to take a look at the risks and mitigations that we have prepared for you. The first one being, what if the contracting company for maintenance has other mandates or other obligations and that limits their availability for the year? So in order to make sure that they're available for 2 times a month, we would have to sign a long-term contract with them that guarantees the 2 days reserved for our company, and which opens a rate of negotiation if we sign a long-term contract with them. The second one is the low engagement of employees for team building activities. So that could be an issue, and the mitigation that we have is to set time paid for them to participate in these incentives, and it could be done around the holidays or days work reduction as well. In terms of the dryer shipping, since it's coming from the US, it might take a long time, which also decreases the productive time. And then in order to mitigate that, we would work closely with the logistics of the shipping company that will ship our dryer and look into expedite shipping in order to reduce the decrease in productive time. So now that we're here, we're going to take a look at why we were here today. We were here to provide insights on our company and how did they do in the 4th quarter, and which project or acquisition they should do and how they should finance it as well. So the conclusions that we looked at are that the increased wastage is problematic in the production and not the price that you thought it was. Also, the second is the operational issues. We will be increasing employee morale to ensure that they have the same values as our company. We will set better budget standards, and we will also suggest the subcontract maintenance option in order to make sure that our employees are less pressured to work more. In terms of the project investment, my colleague Ryan suggested that we acquire the dryer. We will also pursue financing and get the government grants. So overall, we're here to make sure that your company moves forward. In order to do so, these acquisitions that you'll be making and also the values that we have need to be maintained throughout the long-term strategy of our company. Thank you, and we open the floor for questions.
First question. It's a new problem that we're encountering. Some of our offices only speak English, whereas others only speak French. And it's new, but we're facing a communication problem. So when a French-speaking person is speaking with an English-speaking person and they're not understanding each other, what would you recommend we could do to make it easier?
Well, I think it depends on the employees, right? So depending on the actual company that is coming in, we would basically make the needs off of that. Like I mentioned, we would be doing team building. Based on that, we could also try and do not culture trainings, but on the other side of things, something integrated towards that as well. We can do workshop trainings in language, but it is also maintaining that people understand each other. We can welcome an atmosphere that can be someone, let's say I understand English very well, and I'm a French speaker, but I would like to speak in French. If that can be something that can be maintained, that could be something looked into, but it's also on a employee basis as well. So this can be something that we can get from, like I mentioned, there will be feedbacks with the employees, how they think the trainings will be going and things like that. So from that, we can base our actual improvements of these trainings and such on the employee feedback and basically evaluate those KPIs as well.
I do have another question as well on a completely different subject. So you guys were recommending to us that we go forward with the acquisition of the dryer, but have you thought of this investment in a wider perspective for the paper industry in Canada, as well as the rising of the internet news and all that stuff. And how do you think the acquisition would be placed in this specific context in Canada?
Currently, media is talking about how the environment is becoming very important to us, and by acquiring the dryer, we're also reducing wastage and we're using recycled material. It's also a competitive advantage because others will see how our company is maintaining its values of keeping environmentally sustainable projects and having environmental products offered to its clients. So overall, the trend of environment, if we're the first ones to step in, people will follow, but we'll have the competitive advantage, which is good for our company.
So you talk about the KPI for the collecting feedback for the employee. So can you give me some examples?
Some KPIs, definitely. One of them that is really drastic and that could help with that, as well as employee retention. That's number one, to see if employees are actually staying with our company after an acquisition like this. So we can look at before and after as well, after one training, after two trainings, or especially after we implement new feedback, how that changes things as well.
On slide 12, maintenance options. We have one or two. The one is subcontract.
Yeah, one is subcontract. It's with an external company who will come in twice a month to at least stay 8 hours per day.
I've got a two-part question. Do you
Yeah.
think this price is too much? And the second part of the question is, what if we hire a new employee and this employee doesn't have a full-time work doing maintenance? What is he going to do?
Well, it takes 4 months for us to look for that new employee. So before we hire that employee, we're going to make sure that he has the qualifications in order to do so. So pretty much you're going to have to try to recruit him through maybe looking at trade school, looking at specialized schools to see if he's qualified for that position. So of course 4 months is reasonable enough since this is a hard position to fill. And for the price, considering that they're professionals, this is what they do. And they're spending 8 hours thoroughly inspecting the facilities. I think it's a decent price. It also said that they're paid $45 an hour. So considering that we're going to pay that price, we better make sure that they're doing the job thoroughly, which will help our company.
And quickly, how do you think this ties with the company's value as well as quality maintenance? Do you think both options are the same, or because you have one day, every day maintenance and twice a month maintenance? So how does this tie with the company's value?
Well, considering we're also going to be implementing a new machine, which ideally will have less maintenance crew, also one aspect of this new machine is that it has its own specialized maintenance team that comes in.
Period of questions over.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.